Greetings friends, welcome once again to my game room. Today I'd like to talk to you about a game here that's a very ancient game, but a very popular game called Nine Men's Morris. And Nine Men's Morris is actually a part of a larger family of games. The three-in-a-row genre have been around for millennia. These games include all the way from Three Men's Morris, which is sort of a tic-tac-toe-ish game, all the way up to a 12 Men's Morris. And there are other variations to the game as well. But these games are very ancient, and evidence of them has been found. Archaeological finds all over the world. They've been carved into stone, they've been in wood. The game is also called Mills, or the Mill game. There have been a lot of commercial versions of the game. In German it's Mühle. There's also a theory that the name Morris, Nine Men's Morris, comes from the French Merles, which is kind of a generic game term in French, but it also specifically means hopscotch. But it's sort of a play word and a play on words that eventually through English became Mills and Morris. So Nine Men's Morris is probably the most common name that you'll find for this game. Some people have theorized that the game is based on the ancient Latin word for soldier, and pieces on a board being commonly referred to as soldiers, and the Latin morellus, which means game piece. So there's another variation. And there's another strictly British name for the game called Ninepenny Marl. And it's basically the same game, just a regional name for it, which I think is kind of a nice name. Now, the historian R.C. Bell speculated that the origins of the game, or at least I should say the oldest evidence of the game, was actually carved into the cornerstones at the Temple of Kurna in ancient Egypt. A lot of game scholars disagree with that, don't think it's really that old of a game, but that's part of the challenge with games of an ancient origin, is figuring out how the game came about or where the game came about. And that's another challenge with Nine Men's Morris, is that familiar pattern is found all over the world in all ages, all cultures, civilizations. We also have writings from the Roman poet Ovid, writing in the year 2 in a poem that refers to a game vaguely, as they usually did back then, but because of the fact that it was vague, we can assume that it was a popular enough game that his readership would know what he was referring to. Could well have been this game, so it does go back at least to that period. And Thomas Hyde, the British Orientalist from a few hundred years ago, he claimed that it was played in China in ancient times as well. No reason to doubt that, because as I say, it's found all over the world. By the 14th century, Nine Men's Morris and its variations were very popular in Europe, well known around the Mediterranean. As with most games, it falls out of favor and back into popularity again, and the 20th century saw a fair resurgence of the game, and that's very understandable. It's a good game. It's a fun game. And I probably played this historic game more than any other in the collection of Peg Pastimes games. I've taught it to a lot of people. It's easy to learn, easy to play, and has enough of a challenge that it's even played in tournament. And once in a while I actually win. So it's a good game in that regard as well. Let's learn how to play Nine Men's Morris, and then I'll come back and talk a little bit more about it. To play Nine Men's Morris, each player receives 9 pieces. No great surprise there. As with most such games, the lines on the board indicate the legal paths that pieces can be moved and the relationship between them. And as with most such games, the pieces start off the board. The objective is to create rows of 3 on spaces connected by the lines. Such a row is called a mill. These 3 black pegs are not a mill because they're not directly connected by the lines. When such a row is formed, the player can remove an opposing piece from the board if that piece is free. These two white pegs are free. This row of 3 is a mill, therefore not free. The first phase consists of placing a piece in any empty space on the board. If a mill is formed during this phase, a free opposing piece is removed as usual. Pieces cannot be moved on the board until all 18 pieces have been placed. That leads us to the movement phase. Pegs are moved one space per turn following the lines on the board. No pieces are jumped, pushed, or displaced. Again, if a mill is formed, a free opposing piece is removed. The most desirable position of one's pieces is where a single piece can be moved from one mill to a neighboring mill and back again repeatedly. Each time the new mill is formed, a free opposing piece is removed, and the process can only be stopped by careful defensive positioning and good timing. And the game continues in this way until the game is won. In the 16th century, it was not unlikely to find in a large English estate that they had a garden that was shaped like a nine-men's Morris board. It was a popular game with the aristocracy at that point, and very elaborate sets were made. And our old friend William Shakespeare refers to the game as well. In Midsummer Night's Dream, he claims that the nine-men's Morris is filled with mud. And we take that to mean that in the English garden, the shape of the nine-men's Morris board had experienced a lot of rain. There are fewer variations on the game as far as the rules are concerned. Some folks will play the game that only allows a certain number of repetitions when you've got a mill that you deconstruct and reconstruct, that you could only do that maybe twice and then you have to move on. Sometimes it'll be played that will allow no repetition whatsoever. There was a chess champion named Emanuel Lasker in the early part of the 20th century, and he invented what's called Lasker Morris, based on this game, but a little bit more of a challenge to it, a nice variation. And in Lasker Morris, each player gets 10 pieces, and the pieces can be moved in the placement phase of the game. So things get underway a lot quicker that way. It's a more exciting game. So that's Nine Men's Morris. It's a terrific addition to the Peg Pastime series. It's available from Red Hen Toys, like all the rest of them. And definitely encourage you to pick up a copy. You can find more information all over the internet about Nine Men's Morris and its variations. We also offer the game called Aki, which is essentially Three Men's Morris, and also Morabaraba, which is the South African variant of 12 Men's Morris. So those are also available as part of our series. I definitely encourage you to check them out. I thank you very much for tuning in. Thanks for your subscriptions. Share this video with your friends and comment down below there. As usual, if you have any additions or questions or suggestions or anything, by all means, let me know, and we'll try to incorporate that into some future videos. And so meanwhile, like I always say, be sure to play every day.